well, sometimes birth is just traumatic. And it's like, no, birth doesn't have to be traumatic. Sometimes birth goes in a direction that we weren't expecting, but we as caregivers, as professionals, as medical professionals, as birth attendants, we have a ton of control on how that person, that patient, that mom experiences that and what we can do to protect them from inflicting trauma on them. And I think that's really, really, really important when we're talking about birth trauma.
This is NICU Babies Parent Support with Kathryn Whitaker, a podcast from Hand to Hold, a national nonprofit that provides free personalized support, resources, and community before, during, and after a NICU stay. My conversations here focus on education and personal stories with medical and hospital professionals, counselors, therapists, and NICU moms and dads from across the country. So whether you're preparing for a NICU stay, you're currently there, or you're months and years past your stay, you belong here. The NICU is hard. We're here to help. I'm your host, Kathryn Whitaker, the mom of 6 children, including my very own NICU baby, and I'm so grateful that you're here. Well, howdy, y'all, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm excited because my guest today has the same Southern twang that I do. She got her master's from Bama, and I was like, I think we can still be friends. I'm an Aggie. You're a Bama grad. I think we can do this. But our topic today is one that I believe many of us have experienced. Certainly, if you've had a NICU birth, it may have been traumatic. It may have been difficult. It may have been hard. And you're trying to find healing and maybe trying to find peace. And I felt like there was a lot to dive in there. What do you wish you knew about birth trauma? What do you wish you knew about healing from birth trauma? What do you wish you'd known about how to be an advocate in your birth experience? So I reached out to HeHe Stewart, and she is a gem of a human. She's also pregnant with her first baby, which is super exciting. So there may or may not be tears in this episode, but my hope is that as you listen to this, one, you'll feel seen and you'll believe that whatever trauma you may have experienced in a previous birth, it doesn't have to be your whole story, maybe just part of your story. So I'm so honored that my guest today is HeHe Stewart. She is a leading childbirth educator, advocate, and a maternity care reform expert. With a master's in human development and over a decade of experience, she empowers families with evidence-based birth prep, informed decision-making, and postpartum readiness. She's a fierce advocate for informed consent, reducing unnecessary interventions, and ensuring patient autonomy in birth. So beyond working with families, HeHe is actively involved in legislative efforts to improve women's health policies and to expand access to midwifery care. I think it's midwifery care. She works to reform maternity care by advocating for patient rights, increased birth options, and improved maternal pregnancy, women's health, and newborn development, giving parents the knowledge that they need to navigate birth and postpartum with a lot of confidence. Her work continues to drive meaningful change through education, advocacy, and policy reform. We have so much to talk about, so don't go anywhere because we're getting ready to chat. Let's get to it. Well, I'm really excited to have, it's always fun when the expert enters the room. So HeHe, thanks for being here today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm excited for this conversation.
No, you're like a podcasting expert, so this should be a piece of cake for you. I always like to give people a little bit of the backstory so that they know like what your receipts are. So maybe explain to people why you got your degree in human development and sort of how that led you into what you do today, because it's pretty varied. Childbirth educator, you're an advocate, you do all sorts of things. So give us an idea of a little bit of the journey there.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I got my master's degree, I actually thought that my career would take me into childhood development in a very different way. I'm still very much into child development, right? Like that's very much what I do and encompass and doula work every single day. But when I had gotten my degree originally, I thought I would be working with children on the autism spectrum. That's kind of how I had set out. That's what I had my sights set on. And I actually came up to Boston from the University of Alabama, which is where I got my master's, trying to get a job with children on the autism spectrum. I was trying to work within that realm of the education sector. And Funny enough, at the time, it wasn't funny at all. And my feelings were really hurt. And I couldn't figure out why I wasn't able to get my foot in the door in any organization that served families that had children on the spectrum. And, at the time, like I say, I was really perturbed by it. I was like, what is going on? Why can't I succeed here? Why can't I find a job here? Why am I always finding jobs that are adjacent to what I want? So in early childhood, which I got to serve a lot of families with children on the autism spectrum, but it wasn't my primary job. In early childhood education centers, which again, I may have, exposure to children on the spectrum, but it wasn't my primary job until one day I was working at an early childhood education center with no children on the spectrum. And a coworker just said, "You'd be a really great doula." And I said, "What is that?" And they said, "Well, it's kind of like a midwife, but you don't do any sort of like medical support or clinical work. And you are simply educational and support for like pregnant and laboring moms." And I was like, wow, that seems pretty cool. So I took a weekend class. And at this point, don't forget, I had already had my master's and been practicing for a couple of years with my master's. And so when I took that weekend course, I just remember sitting there and I got full body chills. And I kept thinking, like, oh my gosh, this feels like the final puzzle piece to what I have been looking for. But then I had that internal struggle of like, but wait a minute, this is a total U-turn of what I thought I was going to do. And, I took that weekend course and it was literally just a Saturday and a Sunday. And I came home and I made a website on that Saturday night. I had one day of class under my belt and I made a website and I thought, all right, if this is going to take off, then people will find me. And people in my life knew that I was training as a doula. And someone in my classroom at that time connected me with their friend. I had my first baby 2 months after taking the training. So I had a client within a week. I had the first birth within 2 months. And the rest is history. I mean, really, when I look back, I'm like, wow, things just took off so fast for me. And it was truly like the universe being like, all right, HeHe, you found it. Good job. And now we're just going to like give you all the opportunities ever. And I feel super grateful and blessed. And yeah, I wake up every single day super jazzed to be able to do this work. And I have never once been on the verge of burnout. Now, there have been plenty of times in my career over the last 10 years of being a doula where I have felt like, all right, I'm not in quite alignment, but I have never, ever once thought, oh, I think I got to make a pivot away from birth work. It's just, I actually can't imagine my life without birth work, even in the future.
Well, that tells me, one, that you're really relational. I had a beautiful friend who was my sort of accidental doula after our NICU baby. And she really helped me enter into that birth in a completely different headspace. And I was so grateful. In fact, I just ran into her a few weeks ago unexpectedly. And I was like, I talk about you all the time. And she's like, what? And I said, I never would have expected that that would have been the turning point, was having a really beautiful accidental relationship. We were friends before, but then she became a doula. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I can appreciate the joy there of like finding the thing and then being able to move through it. It's really awesome. So okay, so I know that you deal with lots of women
Mhm.
in many different areas entering into birth. Some it's their first baby, it might be more than their first baby. Maybe they've had completely normal births, or maybe they're super traumatic births. So someone who's actually entering into a birth experience that might have been traumatic before and they're really apprehensive about this next birth. How do you approach that experience with them?
Yeah. So I think that if you are, well, I think those are two different things. So I think if you are coming in and we know that you have a difficult labor, typically labeled as high risk, we're
Mhm.
going to prepare a lot different than someone who has never had a traumatic birth before and is not high risk. Um, I have two really firm beliefs about birth trauma. And my very first one, and it's like it's a priority that I say all the time, and it sometimes gets me in a little heat, but when you look at the data, it is right that most birth trauma is avoidable. So we can really avoid a lot of birth trauma, almost all of it we can. even when you have a situation where someone is high risk. So, for that, we are preparing that person that does not have previous birth trauma, even though they are high risk, or they have something that we know about. So, for example, maybe they have a fetal diagnosis, such as a heart condition, or their baby is maybe missing an organ, but not an organ that's vital to life, right? So their baby's still going to be born, they're still going to live, but they are going to need some additional things after birth. Or maybe they have a diagnosis of Down syndrome. So things that will change your birth experience and could be potentially traumatic depending on how you approach the situation, you prepare the situation, and how you're treated in that situation. And I think that's kind of the facet of where we go with people who don't have birth trauma already, but we know that there might be some factors that could lead to birth trauma. On the opposite end of the spectrum, for someone who is coming to us and they have birth trauma already, now we've got two different things that we have to prepare for. And the first one's not really preparation, it's really unraveling what happened in their first birth. It's really that processing period, right? And so we spend a lot of time with people who come to us to get what they call their redemptive birth, unlearning what they learned in their first birth, whatever that may be, and whether it was education that they received beforehand or it was through that lived experience of experiencing birth trauma. We're going to unlearn that. We're going to process it, and then we're going to actually use it to our advantage in this birth. And then that second part is, how do we prepare for this birth, not only to redeem what you didn't get last time, but also how do we go in a whole different direction where you can have a beautiful birth this time. And so those are two different people. Those are two different experiences, and they're two different ways that you prepare for birth. We know the second thing, this is my second like pillar, is that birth trauma is never your fault, ever. Birth trauma is almost always caused by the way that you're treated in labor. So you can have two people who have, let's say, high risk labors, and they have the same diagnosis, and one is treated really compassionately by their staff. They are kept in every decision. When they decline something, their staff says, we respect you and we trust you. When things do get a little intense in labor, they have someone that is stepping that patient through what they are experiencing. They are explaining what's happening in the room. They're explaining the procedures that are being done. They are explaining why things are being done and what's happening. And then that second patient, they're not asked what they want. They're not treated compassionately. They aren't being told what's happening to them and their bodies and their baby. They're not kept in the loop of why things are happening. Patient A is not going to have trauma, even though they went through the same exact thing, even though things got really intense, and even though their birth went in a way that they didn't necessarily plan for. And patient B is going to walk away super traumatized, maybe even not even wanting to ever have children again because the experience was so horrible. And I think that's what a lot of people fail to recognize, both consumers and medical professionals, but a lot of times it's medical professionals, and they'll say things like, well, sometimes birth is just traumatic. And it's like, no, birth doesn't have to be traumatic. Sometimes birth goes in a direction that we weren't expecting, but we as caregivers, as professionals, as medical professionals, as birth attendants, we have a ton of control on how that person, that patient, that mom experiences that, and what we can do to protect them from inflicting trauma on them. And I think that's really, really, really important when we're talking about birth trauma. So my first thing is, a lot of birth trauma is avoidable, and we can absolutely prevent it. And the second thing is, it's never your fault, and it's almost always caused by the way that you are treated in labor.
So, if you find yourself in a situation where you're coming out of a difficult birth the first time or the second time and you're entering into a new birthing or hoping for this redemptive experience, how do you counsel your patients to be advocates so that they don't have to relive the hard thing that happened before?
Yeah, a lot of it happens in that unlearning and processing process. So let's take an example of what's a really great example. Okay, how about an example of someone who, in their last birth, they really wanted to push in hands and knees or in any upright position. And they were essentially assaulted by their medical providers. They were flipped over against their will, even though they were screaming, no, even though they were saying, I don't want to push on my back, even though they were saying, I'm comfortable here. Their medical providers literally flipped them over. And they have trauma from that first birth. And now we're having a second baby. The second thing would be, or the first thing would be to share with this mom that wasn't your fault. You had done your work. You had said no. You had said you were comfortable. You had said you didn't want to be on your back. So relinquish yourself of any guilt or heavy feelings that you have, maybe even blame on yourself that you didn't do enough, because you did do enough. It doesn't mean that this time we won't do it differently, but last time you did your job and you did enough. The second thing is we want to actually appropriately identify what did actually go wrong. Well, your medical professionals did not respect you. The second thing that comes to mind is, was there anyone else in that room that could have advocated for you? So if you had a partner, why did they not speak up? And it's not to blame them, but to understand what prevented them from speaking up. Did they feel like they did not have the words? Did they feel threatened by the medical staff? Did they feel frozen, that fight or flight or freeze? Were they frozen? And if that's the case, why? Let's do it differently this time. Maybe they did speak up and the medical staff threatened them and said, if you continue to tell us no, we're going to kick you out of the room. Right? There's so many things that can transpire. And if you've never had a baby before, you probably don't realize that things happen in a split second. And so in the birth room, it can be really easy to say, well, why didn't you do this? And why didn't you do that? And it's like, well, within 7 seconds, the whole situation was like completely done. Right. And so, of course, looking back, everyone can play Monday morning quarterback where you go, dang, I wish I had said this, or darn it, I wish I had done that. It's a little bit harder to do it in the moment if you're not prepared. And so maybe this time we prepare your partner a little bit better, or maybe this time you think about investing in a doula, or maybe this time we have a very, very boundaried conversation with your nurse that says, listen, I have some really extreme birth trauma from my last birth, from being taken advantage of by the medical staff. And not only do I want to share that with you, but I'd like to set the expectation that I'm expecting you to advocate for me on my behalf, because I know that's part of your role in this room. Going back to the way that your medical providers treated you, I think having conversations in your prenatals in this second birth is really helpful. So have that same conversation that I just outlined, but start it at 16 weeks. And then mention it again at 20 weeks, and mention it again at 24 weeks, and mention it again at 28 and 30 and 32 and 34 and 36. And that way, when you get into that birth room, there is no one entering your space that doesn't go, oh, she has birth trauma. And it was done to her by her medical staff. I should be really, really intentional of how I treat this lady. I should be very careful of the words that I use. I should not put my hands on her without her permission, because I know that's what traumatized her last time. And so I think that that processing piece is important. What happened? What went wrong? Why did certain things not get done? And then how do we prevent those in this birth coming up? And it's going to be different for everybody. So for someone who has maybe a history of, let's say, sexual assault, and their first birth, they were forced into vaginal exams. This time, it's going to come down to conversation for sure, but more so, it's going to come down to, don't take your pants off in prenatal appointments. Don't lay back for vaginal exams in birth. Make it known in your medical chart, I have a sensitive history. I do not consent to vaginal exams unless they are requested by me or my medical staff feels as if my life or my baby's life is in danger. I don't want any for hospital policy. I don't want any just to check in. If we're making a decision that is dependent on a vaginal exam, for example, I'm trying to decide if I need an epidural because I have a lot longer left in labor, or I'm trying to decide if I'm 9 centimeters, I will request it. Please come to me if you feel any different or you reach a place in my labor where you think a vaginal exam would be very helpful, right? And so it's going to look really different based on your history, based on the trauma that you have, based on the goals that you have in this birth. And I think sometimes, unfortunately, it takes you living through a birth to understand what your goals really can be. And notice I said birth and not trauma. It doesn't mean you have to live through trauma, but sometimes you really don't know the plethora of options or choices that you have in birth and in labor without having done it once before. And so a lot of people go into their second birth realizing like, oh, I think I actually could have chosen this in my first birth. And we're like, yeah, you totally could have. Let's talk about some of the options that you have this go round.
This podcast is produced by Hand to Hold, a national nonprofit, but we're more than simply a podcast. Be sure to download our app in the Apple Store or on Google Play, or you can visit our website to discover all the ways that we can support you as a NICU parent at handtohold.org. You can join one of our support groups, sign up for counseling, find loss and bereavement support, request a peer mentor, or check out our educational resources and family stories. And all of that is at no cost to you.
No, you're reminding me. So I've had 6 babies, seven births or 7 pregnancies, 6 babies. And our 6th baby was the one that followed our NICU baby. And I remember walking into that room that morning. We had scheduled an induction. They were just going to see if we could get things rolling. And I told them, I said, I'm not putting on a hospital gown. And they said, what? And I said, that's really like it triggers a lot of things. So I'm just going to labor in my own clothes. And also, I don't want to be hooked up to the pole, like start the IV, but I can't do the pole. And I was like, it's just we're trying to like redeem some of the hard things that happened. And I think that you touched on a really good point is that I had a long conversation with my OB. She had been my OB for a while. The OB that delivered our NICU baby had to be at a different hospital, so it was a different OB. But I was back with the one that had been a part of our life for a long time. And she and I had some really honest conversations. And she's like, Kathryn, what can I do to help you? And so I think that you remind us, certainly me and everybody that's listening, it's really important to have a long conversation with the people that are going to be in that delivery room or that delivery space, wherever it is. Because I think when you can understand the why, I wasn't just being obstinate because I didn't want to wear a hospital gown, but there was a why there. And she was kind enough to say, tell me the why so that I can be your advocate in that room. So thank you for saying that. It reminded me of what an amazing OB she is. So thank you for reminding me of that. So what do you think he is like a common but unexpected emotional reaction that parents might have either after a traumatic birth or after a NICU stay? Like, maybe it comes out of nowhere and you're like, "Oh, that's completely normal," but I know it may have felt unexpected.
Yeah. Well, I have 2 of them. So the first thing I think is not bonding with your baby because you're in
Mhm.
such shock of what happened to you and your brain is literally just trying to survive. Not only is your brain trying to process what did happen, but it's trying to fill in gaps. And we know from psychology that our brain will fill in gaps, not always with the truth, sometimes just
Yeah.
with things that it wants us to believe is true to protect us. Sometimes it kind of glosses
Yeah.
over things. And there's a lot of times with people who have birth trauma where weeks, even months, even years later, they'll say, I think that this might have happened, or like, I'm starting to remember pieces of my birth. And you're like, yep, your brain is starting to kind of process what horrible things actually you lived through in your
Yeah.
birth. And that, when your body and your brain are in survival mode, of keeping you alive, of protecting you, not survival mode of oh my gosh, I'm having to feed every 2 hours and I'm having to also figure out pumping. And we're also waking up throughout the night. And there's always a diaper change. And then there's a bunch of bottles in the sink. Not that kind of survival mode, but literally keeping you alive because you just experienced something really devastating. It prevents you from bonding with your baby. And I think that that is a horrible cycle because it makes you feel very guilty. And it makes you feel like I'm a bad mom. It makes you feel like you're alone, like you're the only person. It also makes you feel silenced by yourself because you feel embarrassed to tell other people that I don't instantly love my baby, that I look at this little baby and it's not like I'm not overfilled with joy like I thought I was going to be. Like everyone told me I was going to be at my baby shower. Like social media told me for the last 9 months I was going to look at this bundle of joy and couldn't imagine my life without them. And I don't feel that. And it's because I had so much trauma, right? And the second thing is, I think, over vigilance. So a lot of people will say, oh, well, I'm just a new mom. I'm just like figuring things out. But when you are so stuck to a schedule that if you aren't feeding by 1:59 and you start feeding at 2:03, but that gives you a breakdown. I mean, you are crying, you're anxious, you're yelling at your partner, you are having a hard time from like not spiraling. That is overvigilance. When you won't let anyone else, not even your partner, hold your baby, change your baby, feed your baby, that's overvigilance. When your baby is sleeping 2 to 3 hours at a time at night and you're wide awake and you cannot sleep and you haven't slept for days, that's overvigilance.
Yeah.
When won't accept help, which is so hard. So that baseline, that one's hard, right?
Yeah.
Especially as women, especially as independent women, and especially as people pleasing women. We never want to feel like a burden. We never want to say, can you help me? And especially as a new mom, you want to feel as if you can do it all. And some of us can. I don't know that it's healthy. We were never meant to do it all by ourselves. If you think about birth and motherhood, it was always done in this village setting. We always had other women around us. But when people are eagerly offering genuine help, let me bring a meal to your house and set it on your porch. You don't have to see me. You don't have to entertain. I don't need to hold your baby. I won't even come in. I'm not even going to ring the doorbell. And you say, no, thanks. We're all set. That is overvigilance. When someone comes in and says, can I send in a cleaning service once a week for the next 6 weeks? It's my way to say, I love you. You don't have to get out of the house. They will follow whatever precautions you want. They'll use your cleaning products. They use baby safe cleaning products. And you say, no, thanks. I don't want it. And this is compounding. It's not like if you just say no to a meal, you're like, oh my God, I'm over vigilant. But people who are offering to get you services, who are offering to help you when your mom or your mother-in-law is actually helpful. We're not talking about a mom or a mother-in-law who stresses you out, but someone who's actually helpful offers to come in and can I just spend an hour and a half doing your laundry and doing your dishes and I'll just tidy up your house. I will not hold your baby. You do not have to talk to me if you don't want to. If you want just quiet time, or I'm happy to listen and you say, no, thanks. That is overvigilance. So we really have to be careful that your brain is not making you think that you can't accept help because you have this trauma, right? And so I think those are two things that people really kind of, when they get into it deep, you don't realize that you're in it. You don't realize you're saying no to everybody who's trying to help. And you certainly don't realize like, wow, I'm not bonding with my baby like I thought I would. And a lot of people have this tendency too, and it's just human nature. You're not doing anything wrong, but it's human nature to think, well, this has got to be temporary. So it'll probably be better tomorrow. Well, probably be better next week. Well, it'll probably be better at X amount of time. And the thing is, the longer we let that go unaddressed, the more it snowballs. And so it's a bigger issue and a bigger issue and a bigger issue until you feel totally isolated. And that's a really hard place to come back to. And so I think you can do a couple of things. Be very honest with your medical team. We know from stories that not everyone has a medical team that's really receptive to that. And so you've got a couple of other what I call like filters in place. Educate your partner on what signs are they looking out for? How do you want them to approach you, and where do they go if they start to notice that? Are they contacting your mom? Are they contacting your best friend? Are they contacting your doula? Are they sitting you down? And how do you want them to say that? Do you want them to start with the question of, hey babe, I've noticed this, how are you feeling? Or do you want them to just be very direct? Hey babe, something is not right. So I'm going to reach out to our doula and she's coming over on Thursday, right? That's going to be personality wise and based on your communication and just how do you receive information when you're in a sensitive place. But I think those other things that I mentioned too, have a therapist on board. If you don't already have therapy, at least have a list of therapists that you've touched base with that you know that you like and can take you on in postpartum. Don't be afraid to reach out to your doula that was at your birth, especially if it was traumatic, and say, hey, I'm struggling. I don't really know what I'm struggling with. I can't really like pinpoint something, but something's not right here. And then have a list of people who can help you with what I call the mother load. And so it is literally the load that mothers take on. So have that person that will just come over and talk to you. Have that person that you can reach out and say, would you mind bringing us dinner? I'm so sorry to put that on you. Have that person that could come over and cook freezer meals or do your dishes or do your laundry. You have those people in your life, and people, they genuinely want to care and love for you.
Yeah.
And if you're sitting there being like, I don't know, I don't want to feel a burden, I'm telling you, there's nothing more than other women in your life want to do than love on a new mom. And so take advantage of those people. And some of us have 150 people and some of us have 3, but no matter who you have, reach out to that person and say, hey, I'm putting together a list of people who I just want to keep close within arm's distance in postpartum. Can I put you on this list? People are going to feel so honored. It's like, oh my God, of course you can put me on that list. Thank you. What can I do for you now to help you in your last part of pregnancy?
I love that. That's a great idea. Um, Man, that's really good. Now it makes me wish I should have more babies. I shouldn't have more babies. 6 is enough. Um, if you could whisper something, Hee to um, either a NICU mom or someone who's had a difficult birth experience, just like some words of wisdom, like what would be the one thing that you would whisper in their ear, that like, don't forget this.
Oh, that's making me cry. Oh, that got me. Yeah, you're going to make it through this. You're strong and you're going to make it through this. This sucks. And I think it's really okay for somebody to say, like, this is hard. What you're doing is like really terrible. It's really hard. You didn't deserve this. And maybe there was nothing we could do to prevent it, but you are going to make it through. And I'm here with you. And here's my hand. Hold my hand. And I'm here with you.
You're making me tear up. You reminded me my OB right after we landed in the NICU. She came in the hospital room. Oh, now it's my turn to cry. And she sat next to me, and she just put her hand on mine and she said, Kathryn, this doesn't have to be the end. You can have more babies if you want. And she said, and if this is the end, this is the end. But she said, you would be such a great candidate for a VBAC, and I'm always in your corner. And I think in a tender space, when I was, still very postpartum. I think I was like 36 hours postpartum, and it had been a rocky, rough, horrible, dark 36 hours. To have somebody like that saw that, and she took the time. I know that she was rounding and she had a million patients to go see, but I have never forgotten that, think, gift of presence, that she was like, man, you did a really hard thing. And she said, and it's probably going to get harder. Of course, at that point, we had no idea how much harder it was going to get. But boy, did it feel good to have somebody say that. Ooh, maybe somebody needed to hear that. Okay. So I'll ask you
Well,
one last question.
can I
I
say
don't
one
think this
last
was,
thing?
of course, of
So
course.
I think sometimes a lot of us want to feel, or we have this tendency to feel like I have to say something. And sometimes there's not always something to say.
Yeah.
Sometimes it really is just sitting there holding space and letting that mom or that family know, like, you're not alone. I'm here with you. Hold my hand. You're not alone. I can run and get coffee. I can run and get lunch. I can be a gatekeeper of people coming in and out. Give me your phone. I will give people updates. That way you don't have to see things. Let me know. Why don't you pass your updates through me and I can update whatever page you have? I can send it out to your phone list tree. I can update all of your friends and family that you desperately want to talk to, but you just don't have the mental capacity or the emotional capacity. Sometimes there's nothing to say other than, I'm here with you and I'm going to help you through this. And
Yeah.
there's so many situations, especially in the NICU, that we can't fix right then.
Yeah.
There's no fix. It's just time and really trusting your medical providers that they're gonna figure this out with you, alongside you.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Well, every guest this season, I've been asking a similar question at the very end because it's been a really fun season. It's what I wish I knew. And so there's a lot of things that I wish I knew. So, if you could maybe share one thing that you wish people knew about healing from birth trauma, what do
Mm.
you wish they knew?
Wow, that's deep. I wish you knew that it's 100% possible, because I think birth trauma has this way of tricking us into thinking this is forever going to be who I am. This is a permanent stamp on my identity. Maybe it's become your whole identity. And I think if you're comfortable there, then that's a okay. But if you're not comfortable there and you want something different and you want it to be a part of your story, but not your entire story, that is totally possible. Not only are there so many people that can help you through that, but you are way stronger than you think you are, and you can absolutely get there. And unfortunately, in the US, you're surrounded by millions of women who have gone before you that have had traumatic births and have recovered and healed and come out on the other side whole again. And so you have these mentors and these examples that you can look up to, and you have a group of people, a system of professionals and other moms and people who love you, that if you want to heal and you want to change your identity and not let birth trauma be your entire identity, you can do that. And I hope that you know that you are way stronger than you think you are. And it may not happen overnight. And that is a okay. Nothing in life pretty much happens overnight, it's a process. But when you look back in a few years and you realize where you started versus where you are today, you are just going to be so proud of yourself.
I love that so much that it doesn't have to be the whole story, just part. Oh, that's super. That's so good. Hey, I could literally ask you a million more questions, but thank you for the gift of your wisdom and your passion for what it is that you do. I know it'll be a gift to everybody that listens. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for letting me cry. I don't know if it's these third trimester hormones or just the beautiful NICU stories that I've seen of families like just making it through. But yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me hang out with your people.
Of course, it was awesome. Thanks. In today's 2-minute take, I promise I won't cry. I was so grateful for what he said in that entire interview. There were a couple things that come to mind, especially that touched me. Maybe they touched you too, was her whispering, "You can do this. You're going to get through this." I think there was a moment, there was a time, maybe during birth, but certainly in the months and the weeks that followed that really hard birth, the myriad of specialist visits, hospital stays, surgeries, that I remember thinking, am I going to get through this? And then what she said at the end, that she said that someday you're going to look up in a few years, a decade, and you're going to be like, I'm so proud of the person that I'm looking at in the mirror. And I can say with total transparency and complete confidence that I'm very proud of the person that I have become because of our difficult birth, because of that traumatic experience. I'm also really daggum proud of the kid
who keeps defying the odds. And he keeps showing me, hey, Mom, you're going to get through this. You can do hard things. So I don't know where you are in your post-healing, post-traumatic birth healing, but I do know that HeHe's words hit a place of my heart that I have not touched on in a long time. It was a little tender today if you didn't notice, but how beautiful it is to be seen, and appropriate that it was the doula that made us all feel seen. I love the work that HeHe does in her daily life of both advocacy and also encouraging and empowering parents to be advocates for themselves and for their babies. So it's such a gift. It was such a gift to have her on the podcast. I could have asked her 1 million questions. I guess that means we'll just have to have her back. I hope that you loved today's episode as much as I did. We have so much more coming. Definitely give us a rating over on whatever podcast platform you listen to. It's always an honor when you do that, and share us with a friend. And if you like to see our smiling faces, you can watch us over on YouTube so you can both hear and see us. We got a lot of choices for y'all. So don't go anywhere, because next time you're going to hear a little bit about this.
I think anyone who goes into that NICU experience never anticipates or knows what it's really like until you're really there. And I don't think any NICU experience is the same. I think we all go through this reality of like, oh my gosh, like I'm seeing a baby when everybody else, not everybody else, but a lot of other people get to take their baby home immediately, get to have the love, get to have the matching, outfits, all of that stuff, like the photos. We didn't have any of that. There were no photos. There was no, matching robes. There was no none of that, Instagram perfect birth, Instagram perfect postpartum. It was trauma. It was tears. It was, is he going to be okay? Is he going to have a good outcome, or is he going to be one of the many kids who have a stroke that end up needing lifelong developmental assistance for my first child, when your expectation is that you're going to have a healthy, quote unquote, kid? And that is a huge reality and hard for so many parents.